COVID and education and some of the new things they're trying to slip through education. The title of this episode is called COVID and the Future of Education. And John, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Good. You're cutting out a bit there.
I'm froze.
Do you have other stuff running on your computer?
I have several pages up that I was going to try to share. I mean, they're text based.
I'm talking about other things running in the background. Anything that's causing your internet to take up. All right, that should be fine then. So, how are you doing today, John?
Good as can be. I've been building modules nonstop. Sorry, this thing's I was trying to say. Okay. Yeah, I've been spending my time building modules. You know, I'm not used to the online teaching and stuff, but I can't complain because I'm still getting paid and I'm still, still employed. So unlike a lot of people, but
right,
other things, as good as can be. Yep.
Well, I've been, doing stuff from. Boy, this thing I didn't center that very well, did I?
It's pretty good. Yeah, I think it's usually to the left a little more, but yeah, it's all good. No, I mean it seems like it usually is, but it's all good. It looks good.
Anyway, I've been just trying to keep moving along and, doing shows and work and research. I'm almost done with this Talmud versus Islam document I started over a year ago, and I don't know. I've been working on it for hours a day, every day, and I'm just digging out all of the citations to Islam, and what I've found is that everything that's been accused of Judaism and the Jewish Talmud is actually found in Islam. I've found one citation in all of the Talmudic stuff to be true out of 60, 70 that I checked. And about 85% of them I found in Islam.
Okay. Okay.
So big old bait and switch there, It's like, look over there at what we're doing over here, So been interesting.
Yeah, I know you've dug in deep to that lately. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been it's been crazy to go through and actually find all of the citations. But by the time you're done checking them all, you realize, wow, that's one hell of a bait and switch. You blame another group for what you're doing, And then
that's the how the dialectic works sometimes, right?
Yep, that's very true. That seems to be the modus operandi, right?
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk some dialectic today when we talk bait and switch on I guess solutions to the current crisis. Maybe some of these solutions got some horses in them, or maybe they're not as good as we would otherwise like them to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you hearing me? Am I in it? Oh, okay.
I'm just looking for your show notes you sent me, your topic headings. What the heck did I do with it here? Let's see. I know I just had it right in front of me. Here it is. Got it. All right.
It's all right.
So, Department of Education's new proposed rules for federal regulations of distance education and innovation, 85 FR 18638, will effectively open the floodgates for online education corporations to put public brick-and-mortar schools out of business by streamlining, quote, adaptive learning and other artificial intelligence technologies that replace human instructors with competency-based education. Just what we need. And that's also CBE, software which provide direct assessment through subscription-based courseware. Why don't we just go to home schooling and forget this crap? I mean, it's the public schools especially have long been a problem. Courseware that data mines students' cognitive behavioral algorithms to personalize digital lessons. So that's what they've got in mind for you folks. So why don't you start off and talk about this? So what is CBE?
Okay, so competency-based education is basically a euphemism for all those jargon words you tossed out. So it's a euphemism for the adaptive learning software, which is a euphemism for artificial intelligence. Now, in the bill, it specifically equates artificial intelligence with adaptive learning in the CBE clauses. I should mention that this bill is only 64 pages. It's not a bill; it's their proposed federal rules. Okay, they're 64 pages long. There's 147 references to competency-based education. So it's all about competency-based education, and the other jargon words fall under that umbrella. You can compare this with the Every Student Succeeds Act, or known as ESSA, which has it's 392 pages, and there's only 6 references to CBE in there. But it's a euphemism for the adaptive learning stuff. But the way it's delivered is through what's called subscription-based learning, and it also incorporates this element of instead of classical education where you're learning for academic knowledge, it's basically just you have to be competent enough for whatever is your workforce or your career pathway. Okay, on the software. So the subscription-based online stuff. You're going to get a subscription instead of a course credits. Okay, so when all this started going down, I kind of seen it coming because, well, first, when Harvard closed down, it was spring break time, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I better go ahead and just prepare for them to close us down too, because I know how education works, and basically, when one school does one thing, they're all going to follow along, especially when safety or health is involved, because they don't want to be the only person caught, maybe, with some negative consequences of not going along. So when they did that, they rushed over to the state board, okay, all the trustees and presidents and stuff like that. And they went to the Illinois Articulation Initiative, the IAI, all right, and they basically went and got deregulation, or they got the rules curtailed for online learning so that everybody could teach online classes, because typically what it is, you're supposed to have a special cert to teach online. I don't actually have one. They don't have the rules in place because of COVID now, so I can use it. And then there's also rules on what your online modules actually have to have in them for them to qualify. Okay, and so as far as students paying for their education with federal dollars, right, you have to meet certain state and federal standards, and one of those would be the Illinois Articulation Initiative. So anytime I write a syllabus, it has on it the IAI number for the course, which it has under an umbrella of particular learning objectives that I'm supposed to meet. And basically what it does is it legalizes that course to be transferred to other colleges in the state and in the country. So and that way the money can flow. And so they basically at the state level did all that way before they offered these federal deregulations. But the federal deregulations are basically the same thing. And so with the subscription-based learning, you're not on a course credits, you're not on a 16-week course, or, sometimes they got the 8-week courses in the summer and things like that. So the other way that they manage the federal money is basically through attendance and through what they call active engagement, is the student pursuing completion. And so the way that they measure that, there's two times that they're, I've never felt more nervous to mess anything up in as a teacher, other than if I were to not turn my attendance in on time, the 10-day attendance and the midterm attendance. And because if the student doesn't show up in the first 10 days, his or her grant it's not gonna go through. They're gonna lose that money. Okay, same thing. And if you don't report on time, there's problems with the money flow too. So that's why they get on you. Same thing with midterm. If they aren't pursuing active engagement by midterm, basically, then you get less money. You still get some of it, but you don't get all of it. And so this is a way for them to basically legalize or curtail these rules to funnel the federal dollars into the online education companies, and without having for them to measure completion on a credit hour basis, because the subscription based learning doesn't have to be on a 16 weeks. It could actually, they say one of the benefits is the student can learn at their own pace. This is part of the competency-based education philosophy. It's personalized learning at your own pace, learning the competencies as you find them
Isn't
needful.
that what a teacher does when she's right in front of you?
Yeah,
Adaptive,
it is.
personalized learning for.
Well, I mean, ideally there's some kind of dialogue going back and forth, and I hope that it's, with adaptive learning software. I don't want to jump ahead in the thing, but those are on narrow algorithms, so I don't believe it's ever going to be as rich as trivium dialogue between two thinking minds. But the CBE stuff basically is going to allow them to pay on a monthly basis, and if you finish all your modules, in a few weeks or a month or two or whatever, you can get your competency certificate. If you take 2 years to do it, you can just keep paying your monthly fee, and the government will keep funneling federal dollars into that company. Interesting note is, Betsy DeVos was funded K-12 Inc., which is one of the biggest online education corporations. It was set up by not T.H. Bell. He was one of the secretaries of education during the Reagan administration. Bill Bennett, that's who it was. He set up K-12 Inc. Okay, but Bill Bennett or T.H. Bell is important too, because Charlotte Iserby leaked the Project BEST back then, Better Education Skills Through Technology, and basically what that showed was that they were going to do this. They called it the school choice movement, and integrating the adaptive learning software, which is basically just the Skinner box. And I guess I could just jump to the next point because I covered everything there, and that's the next part is the adaptive learning software, which is based on the Skinner box. So B.F. Skinner, Harvard psychologist, operant conditioning was his method. It's basically, it's a sophisticated form of Wundtian stimulus response psychology. Classical conditioning, you might remember Pavlov's dog. You got the stimulus being the food, and the response being the dog's salivation. So you can condition different behaviors through association. So you take the natural stimulus of the food, associate it with the artificial stimulus, the bell. You can ring the bell with the food, and then you can make the dog respond with saliva, regardless of the food's there or not, when the bell is rung. And so B.F. Skinner basically just he put that into refined it into punishments and reward systems, and different behavior schedules. And he basically literally said that you could make a pigeon a high achiever, like a college level achiever, on the proper schedule. And so the Skinner box was basically what he called it, the teaching machine or programmed learning. And so, it was an analog version of what we basically have today, which is the adaptive learning is on digital windows. Okay, so the stimulus is the question answer. Your response is maybe multiple choice, or maybe it's short answer or something like that. Based on your answer, the algorithm will change. If you're really good at it, it'll give you more difficult stuff faster, and maybe put you on a track to more academic stuff.
Hey, John, Amy in the chat says, I've been begging for a phone app to get me through the 7,000 pages I need to study. It would be nice to get a piece of chocolate for every 100 on the quiz or something.
Well, I was going to loop back around to that. So with the program instruction, B.F. Skinner actually in some of his prototypes, he actually they would dispense chocolate for correct answers. Okay, and so instead of the digital windows, question answer on digital windows, it would basically be on a roll of tape on an analog.
I lost you there.
Masters.
Lost you. Yeah, you cut out. Go ahead and repeat that. Just go ahead and repeat it. Do you hear me? Just go ahead and repeat it.
Where did I track out at?
About a sentence back. Yeah, I hear you now. Just repeat what you said.
So it's like the old ViewMasters was the program instruction. The Skinner box was like the old ViewMasters, which was, if you remember, it had the scenes from the Disney cartoon in it on a wheel, and it was like in goggles. You put it up to your face, and you pull this button, and when you pull the button, the wheel would turn.
Right.
And then you'd see a different scene each time. And so basically, he'd do that with the question and answer. So the question would be the stimulus on a roll of tape. You turn the wheel after you scribed your answer on it. And if you got a correct answer, this thing would distribute chocolates on some of them. I don't know if they had, how the mechanism worked, but you can see it describes it in the technology of teaching, B.F. Skinner's technology of teaching, that book, which I cite several times in my book, School World Order. So that's that's your reward for getting the correct answer. And so now you basically just digitalize that, and you plug in some complex artificial intelligence algorithms that are supposed to be able to give you, more challenging lessons if you're fast, and to remediate if you're too slow. But I should, as I mentioned before, these algorithms, however complex they might be, are definitely they're very narrowly defined in terms of, you know, like the old subject stratification. We talked about, trivium, quadrivium, basically, saw all the arts and sciences as kind of a whole, as a unified system. And then as they came in with the compulsory education system, they basically compartmentalized all that, and the BF Skinner stuff, not Skinner because he wouldn't have been around yet, but the stimulus response stuff, the sight conditioning, the Wundtian stuff, it's through the bell, right? So it's like the bell rings, and it's like time to think about this subject, and then the bell rings, turn that subject off, and don't think about it until you get back into that classroom, right? And so the compartment, you can kind of see the algorithms built into that old classroom system as well. And so the other part of this though is that there's no need for the teacher. Okay, there's a component called direct instruction, which basically it's the direct feedback. So this is some of the ways that they push it is they say, oh, your student, your kid can, if the teacher wants to go to the next lesson and he or she's not ready, they can take their time, or if they're faster than the other students, they can move ahead and things like that. But ultimately, the pathways are narrowed and stratified like we just talked about. I mean, there is no trivium involved. There's no quadrivium. It's whatever your career aptitude is based on your algorithms. We should note that there's a lot of data mining built into this. That's basically going to funnel you into whatever career cast they want you to be in. And at that level, it also plugs into basically what we can call a social credit system. We're basically seeing it start here. I mean,
Yeah, we've been
I
seeing it
really
come
hate to
out
say
of
it like that, but I mean,
we've been seeing it coming out of China for years now, and this whole what do I call it? Government by consensus type stuff, social credit score, all of this kind of crap. So that's definitely where this all is headed. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but the merry pranksters were really behind and Stuart Brand here were really behind the foundation of the whole computer movement and everything. Basically, they were all working with the CIA's MKUltra program, and they wanted to create a system of total social engineering. So many of the people that were part of the Merry Pranksters and MKUltra went on into computers. So so Stuart Brand really initiated the whole thing, and then like Dorothy Fadiman, her husband James Fadiman, I had him on the show many years ago. He's the guy who created the computer mouse, etc. So, and then Timothy Leary was, of course, a big proponent of virtual reality and this sort of stuff back when he was still alive, and trying to compare it to the psychedelic experience and all of this stuff, which, of course, they were using it for mind control then, and they're using it for mind control now.
yeah, I mean, I saw the Hans Utter, I heard the video he played with the Jerry Bear guy there and all that. And that ties into some stuff with the AR VR, which is where the adaptive learning is eventually going to evolve. It just is. If we're if they keep us stuck in our houses like this forever, I mean, I used to think like, who's really going to want to spend that much time in this VR world, like Ray Kurzweil says. But if you're stuck in your house all day, I mean, I guess you know what I mean. It's better than staring at a wall, I guess, right? You can have the illusion of having some kind of freedom. But if this sounds crazy, let me read a little piece from the bill. I'm gonna switch this. Hopefully, it doesn't go crazy when I do it. You let me know. Um, Here I am. So the article. Oh, it's slow, I guess, because of this. Sorry.
Which is
this is a cool. Yeah, go ahead.
this is the one on federalregister.gov. I lost you there. John,
if you can
are you
open that.
there? I did not hear you. You keep cutting out. So, are you
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about
here.
the document on federalregister.gov?
Yes,
All right. So,
I am. Can you hear me now?
yeah, whenever you do anything on your side, your signal breaks up. It seems like you have pretty slow internet there. So,
I probably got too. Yeah, I probably got too much stuff up because I wanted to be
yeah,
able
just
to share.
shut down whatever you don't currently need. So, I'm showing it on screen. So, start reading, please. Hello? John, start reading. I was
The
showing.
use of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, go ahead and start reading. I'm showing it on screen here. Hello. Yeah, you got too much. Your computer doesn't have enough RAM or whatever for what you're trying to do there, John.
Hello, can you hear me?
You need to shut down whatever is extra on your computer.
Yeah, it says act. All right, I got it. I'm closing it all. It's going to be difficult to.
Well, your computer doesn't have enough RAM to be able to handle
Hopefully,
all
I can
that
do it.
stuff. I'm
Nah,
not even.
I know, dude. It's a tiny thing.
All right. Well, you need to upgrade your RAM or get a new system or something.
I'm
You're totally frozen. So let's try to move on here. So I'm showing this on screen.
I'm trying to close all this extra stuff here. Here we go. I'm closing. I'm closing.
All right. Well, you got to start reading too. We got an audience here.
Well, like you said. Okay. Can you hear me now?
I hear you, but your video's been frozen for a while. Just start reading, please.
All right. It says active engagement could include. Thing just froze. It just disappeared on me while I'm reading it. Literally. Sorry, dude. I know this was happening with last couple times too.
All right. Well, you need to get more RAM or something on your computer. It's way underpowered.
Let me just paraphrase it. Then I know the language, the key.
Your video is still frozen. Whatever you're doing over there, you got to stop.
I'm trying to close these windows to get all this extra.
All right. Well,
I think it's speeding. It should.
Okay. Can you turn off your camera and turn it back on, please, John? Sorry, folks. So anyway, we're just waiting for John to get his document up and going here so he can read it. There now, his camera's back on. So. All right, so go ahead and read it, John, please.
I'm here.
John, please read it.
I closed it all up because I got it out of the way.
All right.
What it says is that at the end of the clause is that you don't have to have a human instructor. It's what it says. It says adaptive learning or artificial intelligence, and that you don't have to have exclusively a human instructor.
Okay, what page is that on? Can you tell me what you were starting to read there? I didn't need you to close everything, but you got too many windows or something open, and your computer's not able to run.
All right. Well, let me see if I can.
All right.
Hold it up.
Anyway,
like I said, it's basically.
I'll just show it on screen here.
If you do a keyword search for human instructor, it'll come right up. Do a keyword search, Control F search.
Okay, interaction need not be exclusively with a human instructor. Instructor right here. Got it.
Right. Okay, and then the next one, if you want to show the other one, there's one on keyword search artificial intelligence while I'm trying to get my own file up to read it. And there's only in there about 7 times. And it's
okay. So, for example,
it's at the last section.
Let me read this. For example, the current regulations do not address subscription-based programs or consider programs made possible through artificial intelligence-driven adaptive learning. On the other hand, regulations refer to outdated technologies, in some cases based on statutory language such as facsimile transmission and video cassettes, DVDs, CD-ROMs. Because of the time it takes to implement new regulations, it is unlikely that the department will be able to pace with the developing technologies and other innovations in real time. And then others here, let's see, such interaction could include the use of artificial intelligence or other adaptive learning tools so that the student is receiving feedback from technology mediated instruction. We also propose to strike the phrase without active participation and replace it with without further participation. And
And
artificial.
then to go, to go back to that quote that you had before, the the clause after that says, because of the time it takes to implement new regulations, it is unlikely that the department will be able to keep pace with developing technologies and other innovations in real time. These proposed regulations attempt to remove barriers that institutions face when trying to create and implement new and innovative ways of providing
You cut out again there.
education to students, and also provide sufficient flexibility.
Keep
Future
going.
innovations.
Keep going.
Innovations we cannot yet anticipate. We cannot yet anticipate have an opportunity to move forward without undue risk of a negative program finding or other sanction on an institution. It's probably this document.
Are you on a phone or something? Is that why it's so
now
overloaded?
I'm getting rid of it just so that it's gone.
Are you on a phone or something?
No, it's this. I'm pulling up the article I wrote to read this, and it's got pop-ups on it, I guess is what it is. It's
But your computer doesn't have enough RAM. You need to add about another 30 or 40 gigabytes of RAM to that thing.
I know. We just got a desktop for her, so that she's got my wife, so she's got something to use, and I've got the little laptop. And
all right, well, let's just push through here.
I want you to close it, please. Just close it. All right, we're going. Hopefully, this thing is getting out of the way now. Okay, there it is. All right. Okay. Can you see me still? Because I don't know
just
where my
just keep going. We keep hanging up on. We're losing about 7 or 8 minutes just looking for stuff and waiting for you to unfreeze.
Yeah, dude. Sorry, bud, man. So those are them. So basically, what that quote is telling you is that, right, the AI is the algorithms evolve faster than people can regulate. Okay. So basically, they don't want to take the time to go to to have the Department of Ed or Congress or whoever look at is violating privacy rules, is it violating HIPAA rules, like is the algorithm somehow unethical in some other way, is it violating some other law? So they're just going to let this stuff kind of move ahead, and maybe they'll have a review board or something like that. But basically what this means is that the algorithms are going to decide the future of education, right? I mean, if I've said this before, you use these things and you think that it's teaching you, and you are getting something from it, but really you're teaching it more. Whatever you're learning from it, like we just said, the algorithms learn faster than us. So not only does this basically put the algorithms in control of education, but it basically puts the algorithms in control of intellectual labor and thinking itself, right? I mean, if they're going to make the claim that the bot can teach the students better than I can, or any other teacher, then basically what they're saying is that my intellectual labor is obsolete, right? And if Congress is getting out of the way as well, they're saying that effectively goes for rule writing and lawmaking and regulating and stuff like that as well. So and of course it's getting pushed out now because everybody wants their kids to keep learning, and I mean, I don't mind still working and things like that, but at the end of the road, what is going to be the outcome? I mean, there's going to be schools that however long we have to stay in this, and, I don't know how long this lockdown stuff's going to happen. I don't know how much damage to the economy has already been done. But if we go long enough, there will be schools that will need to basically downsize, and with the way these rules are set up, they can get money for software, and software is basically cheaper than human beings, especially when I know it went into effect when they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I don't know how long the full and immediate expensing clause lasts for, but if it's still there, you can automate your workforce. You can buy new technology, or new equipment, so you can write up the depreciation of those assets in a full year. At the end of the year, all the depreciation. You don't have to do it over time, which that means is you can basically buy it for free if you write off the taxes. And so. Um, I should mention that one of the committee board, the review board that looked at making these decisions for these regulations, these new rules. One of them's IBM. Okay, and IBM's got the Watson AI, and the Watson AI, it does all kinds of stuff. It does partners with like H&R Block, to do finance stuff. You can do security stuff. You can do healthcare stuff. And now and it can also do education stuff. So it does it, with partners at Pearson Education. And and Pearson Education is literally the world's largest education corporation. So I don't know, conflict of interest there. I don't know, but that's there's definitely lots of incentives for IBM and K-12 Inc. and people like that to make a lot of money while small brick and mortar schools basically go out of quote unquote business.
Freaking crazy. So yeah, I mean they're using this to get us into a whole AI type of learning system, and students won't have the personal interaction. I mean, at this point, forget that. Go home, homeschool without their crap. But they're probably going to try to control and regulate that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, so first of all, there's probably a lot of parents that feel like maybe, they're not qualified to teach, for whatever reason. We're going to talk maybe about argument by authority as a fallacy later. Like people feel like maybe they're not experts. And so, they might feel better having the software, and hopefully maybe a teacher on the other end of it. A lot of these, I should mention, some of these AI platforms, they're not fully automated yet, but you're essentially just a manager of the software and the algorithms, and you basically oversee it. If anybody teaches using the learning management platforms or systems, they got like D2L, Blackboard, iCampus, stuff like that, and that's what I have to make my modules on right now. You can see in a lot of them they have a lot of metrics built in. They can look at the class like as a whole. Like the highest score, lowest score, the median, all that type of stuff. And so basically, the transition period will be if you're, I don't know how fun that'll be if you really feel, if you're like me and you like to actually teach, trivium, quadrivium, the arts, history, civics with human beings. I don't know how satisfying managing all the data and the statistics will be, but there'll be a transitioning period before the AI is essentially, full on, sentient artificial general intelligence, that talks and, has, I guess, humanoid like capacities. You'll basically facilitate these modules and oversee the data and stuff like that.
It's like when you use Siri and these things, basically all these millions of people all over the world programming the AI how to think at the same time, but you ask like Siri questions or Google questions, especially Google at least will pull up real answers on occasion. Like if you type in or if you ask Google if Google is run by the CIA, Google will actually give you information about Google being run by the CIA. If you ask Siri if Siri or Stanford Research Institute, SRI, Siri are run by the CIA, the Siri comes back, I cannot answer that question. I cannot help you. This kind of crap,
Have you done that one?
I've never tried that. Oh yeah. And so Siri actually gives you very watered down, politically correct liberal answers. Whereas at least Google tends to pull up real data.
Yeah, especially if you're good with keywords, right? Because you can narrow down, what you really want, what you're asking in certain ways. Um, but yeah,
You know, I even
but
I
yeah, you like
I even
yeah.
asked Google the other day if Amazon was run by the CIA, and I try not to ever use these things on my phone, but it actually pulled up all of the data on Amazon being in contract with the CIA for the last 6-8 years. You know.
Yeah, and like you just you said you don't like to use it because the other thing that working with the CIA, right? They keep prints of right your voice signature. You've seen these apps where like you can do it's like a camera and you can make your face do funny things and stuff
Right.
like that. Like I'm looking at that and I'm going, well, hold on. If this thing can read my face and then overlay AR and change my face, then it's basically digitalized. It scanned my face very thoroughly in a way that it now has that file to work with. I'm like, so then what do they do with that data? Like this thing is literally that is its function. That is its purpose.
And then
You know,
you install it on your phone, and give it permission to do all of this stuff, and then you hold up your camera, and it's got a dinosaur or a dragon or whatever the heck, and you move your head and it goes with you. You move your mouth, it goes with you, and it's like, yeah, okay, good grief, people, where are you going?
and like you said, there probably will come, with incentives, and all this stimulus response, the behavior psychological method, it works at the levels of state and government and business as well. Instead of rewards and punishments, you might call them like tax incentives and punishments, or penalties rather, and so, you can get, so maybe there's ways that schools and people can kind of resist the full digitalization. I don't know how much you can when you're stuck in your house all day, but there will be tax incentives at the very least, or social credit incentives. The kind of the carrot and the stick. The carrot, the stick, whack, 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 and then they go carrot, and they hold out the
And,
carrot a
and
little
all
bit.
the
You go to,
liberals will be so ready for that. They'll be so excited to have all of this stuff, all the Democrats and liberals and whatnot, because they're so into being politically correct in their safe spaces and, never telling the truth. Now, logic and telling the truth is offensive. So anything that dumps people down further and tells them what to think rather than how to think, that's going to be all for these. The leftists are going to, the left is always who's behind pushing this crap, or just about always.
well,
So,
let's yeah.
there's somebody in the chat who can't even keep on topic, doesn't even know what the frick we're talking about. Bye-bye, flea market mutt.
Um, let's talk about like contradictions and pathos in the narrative that is fueling or helping to fuel a lot of stuff, because I want to be careful with this. It's a health crisis, but there's other crises happening, right? There's an economic crisis, and then there's
Well, what do they say in
oh
the month of March? 250,000 people died of suicide just in the month of March.
I didn't see that stat, but I've heard people anecdotally, talking about, man,
Right.
this
Well, and
suicides
then
are
you
going up.
figure
Yeah,
that's just the suicide. You figure,
yeah,
most of the other hospital stuff has been stopped, like
yes,
heart
yes,
operations, cancer
yes.
treatment, blah blah blah, on down the list. So how many people are dying on the other end of things? And then you have the suicides and people going crazy in their homes and all of this stuff. And then, human beings are social creatures, so now they got all of this social distancing crap going on. And then, and it's like, I do personally know a doctor who had, and I had her on the show last week. She had one of her patients die this last week. She's got a number over there, and in the city of Ukaipa here in this area, they've had about 4 or 5 people die, and the city's probably 45, 50,000. So it's like 0.001%. But then you look at, okay, how many people have committed suicide from this, died of heart attacks, flu, on down the list, and everybody is only focusing on COVID, and they're giving up their entire life, way of living, and everybody's just rolling over and letting these politicians roll this stuff forward. Again, the Democrats, the leftists, have H.R. 5717 going forward, which is trying to strip everyone of their Second Amendment rights and everything
Oh
else.
yeah.
And, so they just, the left is always using every single opportunity and distraction that they can to strip any rights that people have. And then the people just roll over and give it to them, and it's like, and under the pretext, granted, yes, there are people that have died from this, what they say, 16, 18,000 as of yesterday. They expected it to be like 100,000 now. But every flu season, just in the U.S. alone, we get 18 to 20,000 deaths. We don't stop the whole frickin' country, and, so it's like, how many other people, they're probably not even going to show us the statistics of how many people have died from suicides, heart attacks, not getting other medical treatments, etc., for the last several months because of the whole thing being focused on COVID. And not only that, I'm hearing that, a lot of doctors and nurses are out of work right now because everything is so hyper-focused on COVID.
I just saw a report that a hospital closed because it didn't have any patients. And they're saying, well, we just needed to move them to another hospital. But I want to try to, one of the things I want to do is use the trivium step by step to just look at the facts and not make any actual overt claims about what's going on. And by that, I mean, I want to look at the contradictions, and I want to use the law of Tata. So trivium in logic, we have three rules, right? We have three laws. We have identity, we have contradiction or non-contradiction, and then we have tautology, right? And the simplest way to explain how they all three work together is that either the identity of something is true, right, or it's false, but it can't be both, and neither at the same time. It can't be both at the same time. Okay, so the usefulness of tautology is we can kind of narrow things down based on it, right? So you can look at it. There's some things that are on a spectrum, and there's other things that are on a threshold. But even things that are on a spectrum actually have a threshold component. What that means is, right, it's that either true or false component. Okay, and so there's two ways we can look at this. And this helps when they want to obfuscate the narrative. They like to play the extremes so that the people in the middle, right, sound like either one extreme or the other. And there's two ways to look at there's two extreme ways to look at the situation. One is that, right, the virus is like the most deadly thing in the world. And yes, it's so deadly that we need to lock down literally the world economy to save us. And the other one that you kind of see people going around on the internet is that the virus is a hoax altogether, that it's fake and it's not real. But as you've just pointed out with a lot of your stuff, and I had a bunch of numbers up, and hopefully I can pull them up without messing things up if I need to. So I could be precise. I had CDC, the primary sources on it. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And what that means is we're looking at literally more about the accuracy of the reporting and then the contradictions in the response to those numbers based on how we respond to other things that are equally deadly, whether they be viruses or, if you as pointed out, economic, or there's the police state thing happening as well.
Yeah, I saw an arrest of a father the other day that was playing ball in the park with his daughter, and they arrested the guy, for violating the quarantine, and it's like nobody else in the whole freaking park. And they sent 4 cops with no masks or anything on to go arrest the guy for playing catch with his daughter in the park by himself with nobody else in the freaking park.
Yeah, I've been looking at some of the stuff in the UK, and that's because they're always a step ahead of us on the police.
Well, yeah, UK is they're always the first bitches to roll over and give up everything.
Well, I liked some of the stuff that the Ike boys were talking about. David Ike, give him his credit due on that London Real.
Well, David Ike is a big anti-Basantian theosophist, though. I don't trust that guy at all.
Yeah, I do know that. I do know a lot of those sources, go back to that. But when someone's right, and they're right, what are you gonna do? You got to agree with people when they're over the target. But let's look at some of the contradictions, right? And so what you pointed out, one of the first ones, which is that the flu, right? The flu itself, not just on average, but this year, all right. And I had my CDC stuff up, and I had my for the flu versus coronavirus, but it's currently more. Okay, I think the estimates were this year, the CDC's number where it had a range. It had a range estimate of 20,000 to, I'm sorry, 24,000 to up to 60,000. And I wish I had these numbers in front of me, everything messed up on it. But you can look them up yourself, right? Just go to the CDC and look it up. Okay, the flu is more than coronavirus, both the number of cases that people get them, and also how many people die of it. Okay, and we haven't done it in the past, and for flu, and we're not doing it now for the flu. So there's one contradiction in how they're responding. Okay, one of the sources that I can remember was there's a New England Journal of Medicine article. I think it's called COVID-19 Navigating the Uncharted. And you can read that article. It's an editorial by Fauci himself, who says that the current models at the time, this was earlier in March, would suggest that the rate of both illness and death, or I think it's the mortality rate, is he says is basically on par with an influenza. And he actually says an influenza pandemic, but he says one similar to that, and he names one in the 50s and one in the 60s. And I'm pretty sure we didn't lock everything down in the 50s or the 60s, right?
Yep.
And so he's telling you there that there's a contradiction in how we're responding to this versus how we're responding to that. Okay. And so you can say something like, oh, well, the models changed, they got more data in, but now we have to talk about the problem of induction and the nature of induction. And the nature of induction is that, okay, it's the opposite of deduction, whereas you have a known premise and that you deduce what must therefore follow from what you know. Okay. And so it's also known as a priori knowledge. It means knowledge that comes before you measure, basically, before measurement, prior to measurement. Induction is basically a posteriori, all right, reasoning is post, after measurement or after observation. Well, the nature of induction is such that, right, you can never observe the entire sample because you can never observe the entire universe and all its peculiarities. So you could say something like, observe swan after swan after swan, and say all ducks, or I'm sorry, all swans are white. But then of course there is the black swan event, which
Right,
is where
right,
we get
right,
the
right.
term
Yeah.
from, right? And this is what we have to understand about the limits of induction. So what Fauci is really telling you, whether when they're telling you this and when they come and do their press releases at Berks, I think, and they, oh, well, the models are suggesting this, the models are suggesting something new. They're telling you that it's imperfect and incomplete. So deduction tells you that they ultimately they don't have the full picture, but they're acting like they do, right? Or at least, I mean, when you have such a severe response to lock down the economy, I mean, to me, you should have some pretty definitive causation and not correlation, which is basically all that induction is. All right. And so now, you mentioned like, like Gnostic, like occult, stuff like that, and its connections to like AI and the virtual stuff. Well, you know, in my analysis, empiricism leads to skepticism. Skepticism basically leads to, subjectivism and relativism. And it's just rabid induction that basically refuses to acknowledge that it's when it's operating outside the limits of induction. And so then you move on to something called the argument by authority. And so it's that, well, you're right, my models are, limited, but I'm the scientist with all these credentials, and my models are better than all your deductive reasoning without my models combined. And so now I am the priest of the the new AI algorithm god, basically. And so now basically, and you see, this is the way they frame the argument, is that like, we have to follow the science. Well, science is recursive and always questioning itself, so I'm doing that by saying what I'm saying right now. But they want to make it like science is this, it's some authoritative pronouncement of the most complex statistics backed by a computer, essentially. So, yeah. So, did you want to jump in, or should I go to the next one?
Yeah, just keep going on. I'm just, reading, seeing if Greg Quinones says John is talking about ping pong politics. And then, people begging for their rights to be removed.
Yeah, and this is the opposite of, the golden rule, which is the first cause, or one of which stems from natural law, and this idea of truth being grounded in nature or reality, and that therefore it has to, that is the great equalizer that everybody should use to measure out the differences between each other based on the golden rule. But this is something the opposite, right? This is something where instead of giving everybody the freedom and the rights to follow their own conscience in the truth that their conscience brings them to, and through deduction and things like that, they're basically saying that everybody should be treated differently, but also that everybody, it's the Brave New World quote. I wonder if you thought about this. Have you seen these hashtags alone together? Like the alone together, right? And then all
No.
this one world stuff, one world. Well, first of all, alone together is Orwellian. It's a contradiction. But second of
Well,
all,
no, Orwell was Huxley's student. So everybody, who drinks during the show, there's your drinking cue. Huxley was named there. They've been doing that for years. You play the drinking game when they hear Huxley's name mentioned, because Huxley always comes up in this type of research. You cannot avoid this, this shitty family. Excuse my French.
Well, one of the phrases in Brave New World was, everyone belongs to everyone else. And so that's basically part of this, anti-golden rule thing, where it's not that everybody has the right to understand truth, based on their own experience, their own conscience, using the trivium, etc.
Sorry, Greg just answered. Ping pong politics. We are the net while they hit the ball over our heads. The first shot of the day. Anyway.
Oh yeah, that works. Yeah, I get it. Man, you should start playing a new game that's called at what point is John going to forget what he was talking about when he comes back on the show? I think I'm getting ready to do that. He threw me off with the ping pong ball. Where was I at in my my diatribe?
In your diatribe, man. You were talking about we were way down in the numbers of COVID or something on your list.
Oh yeah, that's easier. Let's go back to we were going kind of on a tangent. We'll go to the outline. Okay, so another one. All right, and this is kind of based on what we just talked about, the nature of induction, right? These models. First, it was 2 million dead. I had all these. I wanted to show people, because it's like, I know how it feels when you hear people throw out numbers, and you want. Because even when I check the numbers and I keep up with them daily, just to see, like, okay, are they telling us that the curve is coming down? I'm trying to kind of gauge.
Well, so if it doesn't reach, then they'll say, well, us, putting you on quarantine for 3 months worked, and then they'll say, see,
yes.
we win, we were right, So we saved 1.8 million lives, that'll be the claim. Meanwhile, Bill Gates goes on TED Talk saying he wants to cut population through vaccines, and now he says he wants to save lives with vaccines. If that's not a freaking contradiction right there,
Yeah, and it's, look, when they say that, oh, well, the reason why the numbers are down is because we locked y'all in your houses, right? Well, is that true? Whether it is or not, it's non-falsifiable. You can't prove that. It's like they used to say, like, it's the old example of the tiger repellent, right? And the guy, the snake oil guy, is going around selling tiger repellent, and then someone's like, hey, what are you selling? He says tiger repellent. He goes, dude, we live in the city, man. There's no tigers around. He goes, exactly. Right. In other words, exactly. My tiger repellent works perfectly. Right. And
right.
And the evidence, the absence of evidence, is
not,
to them.
Not the absence of evidence is not evidence of the theory being correct. You have to have substantiating evidence. So it ends up being a circular argument or an adveracunium.
Exactly. So there's another fallacy in it. And then, and what it allows them to do is say that, well, they can always change the model because every day is a new day with new data.
I'm sorry, not adveracunium. Sorry, what? Begging the question. There we go. The question is the answer.
Yes, right. Yes, that is. Yeah. Right.
So yeah, got that one
It's all,
wrong.
it's a, it's yes, it is a false use of logic, right? And so someone following their own conscience, having hopefully a conscience, goes and looks at a contradiction and says, okay, wait, we're making claims beyond what we can actually prove, and so maybe it's but there's none of that in the literature, right? It's like we have to keep doing this, right? And then there's the tests, right? There's how do they test, right? And so there are many other coronavirus strains that are not the COVID-19. A lot of the diagnoses happen over telemedicine, okay, which is another thing that's getting a big boom right now. And I'm sorry, but to me that's not a confirmed case. I mean, I'm just telling you something. I mean, like, what if I'm not that good at articulating? What if I'm leaving things out of what, I mean,
Well,
at least if I'm in front of you, you can actually take my
right,
temperature
right.
and,
Well,
do other things.
Amy in the chat says, "Can we get a total number of people killed by vaccines so far since they were first invented, not including the aborted children they're made of?" And no, you couldn't get an actual number of that because number one, they always hide the numbers. Number two, didn't just 7 people die in Africa from COVID vaccines or something like that they were just testing. But and then on top of hold on, on top of not being able to get the actual numbers for that, then you would have all of the autism numbers and everything that that people have been exposing for years. Like I had on what's his name years ago who exposed the MMR vaccine. Doctor, he's the one who lost his medical license.
Wakefield?
Dr. Andrew Wakefield, right. I interviewed him.
Yeah.
And he went up against his former best friend, Richard Horton, at The Lancet. And The Lancet basically committed academic fraud to shut him up over the MMR vaccine. So, and then you have all of this herd immunity fallacy. It's like, I look at the wearing the mask thing, and I live in the mountains. There's a lake, near my place, and I see people walking by themselves with no one around them for a half mile with a frickin' mask on, or a guy working in his yard carrying stuff from his car to the house, nobody around with a frickin' mask on. So I'm going to go with the herd immunity fallacy. It's like, so. And people with vaccines, well, if you don't get the vaccine, you could contaminate the rest of us. Well, how would that be so if you already had the freaking vaccine, if the freaking vaccine even works? So since all you dumb motherfuckers, excuse me, and I shouldn't say that, I take that back. Since all you fools and some people that I understand working in healthcare and whatnot, they need to do it. But for all of you people going around, walking in the park or by yourself with nobody around for 10.2 miles with your mask on, for those kind of people out there, it's like, what the frick are you doing? But, okay, so if I go out and everybody else has their mask on and I don't, I'm not going to contaminate anyone, and they can't contaminate me because they all got the frickin' mask on. So thank you, everybody.
Well, here's another contradiction in what they say. And they basically say this, that the mask is more for protecting other people from you, even if you're asymptomatic, than it is for protecting yourself from other people. Now,
right.
The first part. Now, I get that. If you got it open, you got it, and you can spread it on stuff. I get you touch your mouth. I get that. Okay, but at the same time, regardless, if I have a mask on and I have gloves on and I don't touch a bunch of stuff, I don't. It boils down to, does the barrier in front of my face work one way and not the other, or does it work both ways? Now, here's the underlying component of it, though. And I had a friend tell me this. He was going shopping, and he said, like, he wasn't wearing a mask. And basically, he said people were, he said he heard him, like, making loud comments, like, I'm going to call it mask shaming, okay, to use a
yeah. Well, it's
term.
like, and it used to be people that,
and so
it used to be criminals that dressed with the hoodie and the mask and the, and all of this kind of stuff. And Alexander in the chat says, when I was working during this, I looked suspicious walking around with my safety goggles and my mask, my black hoodie and cargo pants. Yeah, and then, if you go out and it's like, yeah, the robber was in a mask. Police could, here's another interesting thing is criminals are able to do whatever they want during all this because everybody's got a freaking mask on. It's like those movies when, to hide, make everybody else wear a costume and they walk out with the crowd. That's what's going on right now.
Well, definitely. I mean, I don't, I read somewhere that China somehow got their facial recognition to work with the masks on. I mean, I don't know, but the other part I want to add to the mask shaming is this: it's conditioning people to basically have to demonize and to be pitted against people who don't comply with. It's a visual marker to let people know whether or not you're following all the compliance orders with the social distancing. And so what it's going to do, and we're going to jump to the next part here, we talk about the end game vaccine, event 201, and what was the other one, ID 2020, Bill Gates and the World Health Organization and all that. People are going to they're going to look at, they're already doing it with the mask. They're looking at people like, you are a threat to us. You are a threat to everybody else because you don't have the mask on. And they'll feel the same way about it if you don't get your vaccine and or your biometrics.
Absolutely. Well, and this is how social government by consensus and social engineering works. And people fall for this crap every single time. So, the best thing to do would be to use the liberal tactics on themselves, quit mask shaming me.
I mean, and the thing is, this is the everyone belongs to everyone else thing. Like, people are largely abiding by this stuff. And, I mean, some people going to the beach and stuff like that. But I mean, times I've had to go out, people are pretty polite for all that goes, but
So I Belong in the Kitchen says they're begging for the right to be taken. I just read an article for an app created to rat out your neighbors for breaking quarantine and not wearing facial coverings.
Yep, that's the next.
Then and so what kind of idiot even makes that kind of app? But they're just sitting there waiting, and people will eat it up, and then I mean, like, wow, people. When do people wake up and say, okay, this is enough? We are way overreacting. We've gone too far. But they won't. They're going to take on the ever-liberal mentality and then blame those who are calling this stuff out. It's like I posted this image this morning. I'll show it on screen here. It's here. It's all part of the larger agenda, and then the person wearing the mask and whatnot says, "I think you're being paranoid."
I can't see it. If you had it up, I couldn't.
Yeah, I showed it on screen so people in the audience can see it.
I lost the screen at the time when we were jumbling around. As long as everybody could see me and hear me, I lost you. But it's kind of scary, honestly. Like I can't. I mean. Well, let me just go to the other bullet. The next bullet is, they say that they're essentially telling you, right, that if that it's okay to overreact with the lockdown, but then it's not okay to overreact and go get food. You know what I mean? Like,
Del Bridge sent a couple super chats. Thank you. He says, COVID-19 is a psyop. Many people are afraid and trust their government, and it's like, yeah.
Well, that's
anyway,
what I wanted to say. Yeah, no, that was the thing that I was actually, and you started saying, and I started thinking about social credit and the connections between Kushner and that guy Mark, is it Benioff at Salesforce, and his connections to Alibaba and the connections over the all. Basically, it's a chain straight over to all that social. So when you said they had the app ready to go, they recently said they were going to do a national surveillance team. I believe it was probably through that the American Office of Innovation, which is this public-private think tank where they work on privatization. When you said that, I thought about. First, I heard that story. Then I heard about this app to track people. And in the meantime, they said, "Well, no, he's not actually doing that." But if you read anything about the Office for Innovation, American Office for Innovation, dude, you can't get any information on it. Like they've tried to do FOIAs and things like that. They can't get any. So, he could easily say, no, we're not doing that. And, but when you bring something over, like you said, it's sitting on the shelf, looks like, social Chinese social credit stuff. And, one of the people that would be on that task force basically got financial connections to it. But the fear part I wanted to talk about is, we should also talk about, with trivium, it's, there's grammar, logic, rhetoric, but then rhetoric breaks down into three components. That's logos, pathos. Okay, and these have components. Aristotle said they had components through souls: ethos, the will; pathos, the emotion; and logos, the logic or the thinking, the higher mind. And then, when we're persuading people, we appeal to these things, right? And, academic discourse and, people practicing conscience and the golden rule stick to logos, and they don't let their passions obfuscate, their logos, and they point out contradictions and they try to weed them out and come up to a common ground between people. But, propagandists and, demagogues and, con artists, they want to play on your pathos, your emotion. So this is all about fear. This is all about people, and as I said at the beginning, I get it, but there's more than one thing to be afraid of. All right. I'm a martial artist, done it for almost 20 years now. Actually, I guess it is 20 years now. When you're fighting one person, I don't care what you think might be the most dangerous. There's other tools involved. There's hands, feet, there's clinch, there's ground, there's all of that. So while you're sitting and worried about one thing, and this is how martial arts works. You feint. You blend things together so that one technique looks like another, and you don't see the real danger, which is the third one. And so, there's other things that are happening right now that we need to be worried about. Okay, and so there's four pillars that are basically capitalizing on this. Okay, the first one is the banks. In the corporations, the corporatists, the elites, as far as the economy goes. All right. I'm sure you probably been following economics enough to know that, people like Peter Schiff and others been saying since, is it September, October, they've been dumping money to try to, pump start or keep the economy alive, because basically all that.
You're cutting out there again.
That from the first.
You're cutting out there. You're cutting out there. You're cutting out there. You're cutting out there.
Am I here?
Got to say it 5 times. All right. Start your last couple sentences over, please.
So basically, the economy has been, the metrics stated that it's been on its way out.
You're cutting out. You're cutting out. You're cutting out. You're cutting out.
Like the bond market, the yield.
John, you are cutting out.
I don't know why.
Hello. Because your computer freaking sucks, dude. So,
am I here? Am I here?
Now you're back. So repeat those few sentences, please. And Delbridge says, Dr. Anthony Fauci mentioned that vaccines should be given to children before returning to school. Bill Gates promotes depopulation too. Yeah, we did mention that. Thanks again for the super chat, Del. And Fauci is the same guy who also promoted the HIV equals AIDS fraud, which is actually poop and semen in the blood syndrome. It's an acquired immune deficiency syndrome. You go out and you acquire it. You go out and you get it. It's right in the name. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So if you pump dirty needles or feces or semen into your bloodstream every day for a decade or two, your T-cell count drops, your T-cell can't fight it off anymore, and you get AIDS. And then back in the 80s, the homosexual community demanded that the government come up with a new answer as to what was actually causing HIV, and so or AIDS, and so they invented the HIV virus thing about 9-10 years ago. I interviewed Dr. Peter Duesberg, who is one of the so-called discoverer of AIDS, and he admitted the whole thing on the show, and he also told me a whole lot more off of the show. But it is feces and semen in the blood disease. And if you sit there sticking dirty needles in your arm every day, that'll cause it too. So there you go. Same doctor, Dr. Fauci.
Am I back? I'm back. Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So with the economy, so since October, September, been dumping money into it to keep it sort of alive. There was other metrics that demonstrated that this was going on. So we're trying to, the repo market was crashing, and also the yield curve on the bond market was flattening. So these are just a few of the metrics that a lot of economists said, this economy is getting ready to hit a recession, depression, crash, regardless of the coronavirus. Now, did the some people say, well, no, it could have maybe straggled along and the coronavirus popped it, But my question would be to look at it like this, okay? With the coronavirus, if they had to shut down the economy because it was busted, the coronavirus certainly benefits the bankers and everybody that benefit from the stimulus money, because people are more worried about the virus. They're more scared about the virus than the economic crash. And so, and the part of that that all that stimulus money, it's tied it's framed as a health emergency bill, even though essentially, it's a bank bailout, and so it would have been difficult for them to get that bailout without it. They would have had more problems, if people weren't scared and stuck in their houses. You've seen all the protests worldwide that aren't happening anymore, so they taking care of that, and at the same time, and also, let me see. I've lost track of my notes. The other way to frame it is this. The other way to think about it is this. Do you really think that they would have the bankers, etc., the people, the oligarchs? Do you think that they would have shut down the economy to save? How many people is it so far, Jan? Is it 20,000 people dead so far, something like that?
16 or 18,000 as of last night.
Okay. And they say that now the metrics have gone down to 60. They say they expect now it's going to be maybe 60,000 dead. Okay. How about let's just go with the 2 million? I mean, these are people that literally, fund our foreign wars and our our other exploits, and so
hey, here's something funny. Sorry, I got to interrupt you, and we'll get you back on track with the numbers. I posted a thing on Facebook, quit mask shaming me, and somebody replied, hashtag my body, my choice, right?
That's not that's what I thought about that. I was like, where are all the people? Where is that argument now? See, this is what we're talking about with golden rule stuff. Like, why doesn't that principle apply to other people, right? I mean, it can apply to, abortion and sexuality, but not to health, when it comes to a vaccine. But then what do they say it's for? When they say, no, that they basically refer to, the abortion stuff as women's health. Well, I mean, why is a that's yes. I mean, but it comes back to, well, that's because the abortion doesn't, they don't see the baby as a life. So then that means, it's not hurting anybody else. Right. That's their logic on that. But like I was saying, so the way to frame this question is, do you think that they would shut down the economy to save, however many American lives, or if they could keep making money, or do you think that if they had to shut down the economy and couldn't keep making money, they would come up with a reason to lock everybody down, to smokescreen, the real reasons, which is they spent all our money.
Probably. I mean, yeah, it's certainly possible.
It's just a question. It's
I mean,
and I don't, it's just a question, right?
Apparently, and they were saying the state of New York has more cases of COVID than the rest of the world, or something like that. But I don't know. I saw it. New York is a liberal shithole. We could just put a fence around that, and L.A., San Francisco, and Seattle, and the rest of the country is good to go.
Well, that's another thing that you just kind of highlighted was the they want Trump to lock the whole country down. I don't get that. Even when it was like 40 something states, it's like, it's like, wait, hold on. First of all, most of the states are locked down. And if they don't want to be locked down, they have governors. Like, why are people not allowed to just make their own health risk assessments, at the state level or whatever?
Oh, because you might get someone else sick, yes, and then therefore, so they could, it's the herd immunity thing, Right. Even though the rest of the herd has masks on, and I don't know. I don't know. It's like I
So
lost one.
that's
I
the,
lost one of my masks yesterday that I just threw in the Jeep. I don't know what the hell happened to it. I went shooting yesterday, and I must have lost it at the range. So somebody at the range will find it today, probably.
so with the, so the first one is the banks, is the oligarchs, okay. The second one is the police state, and we just talked about a bunch of it. It's basically this social credit. In my book, School World Order, I talked about essentially how the schools would be merged with the healthcare sector and with criminal justice, and would all essentially be melded together in a social credit system that's one technocratic file that's tracks you in real time with automated policing, or mental health biofeedback treatments on your little wearable device and stuff like that. I mean, so this is basically what we're seeing, right? So because the other two pillars that are benefiting is education technology, which I just went into detail on. It was the first half of the show, and then the last one is going to be uh, big pharma, and you started off on it with the vaccine stuff. And so, these are the ones I really wanted to show people, because these are the ones that sound the weirdest. I think Hans showed some images of the ID 2020. I took good paper notes of what was in the ID 2020. So people don't know, ID 2020 is this project that was set up. I don't want to say it was started in 2018, and it wants to have global ID for everybody by 2020, by this year. And one of the main people that are paying for that, or that's funding that, is Bill Gates. And there's a big vaccine foundation or company that's linked to it too. I don't have that in front of me, so I don't have the screen. I was going to read off the screen, but I can tell you, I got some of the people there on the board. Basically, if you click on the lead on the about, and then there's a drop down menu, and then there's a part where it says leadership. You click on that, and you'll see these people's names, and you can read the details on this. So the first one is Blythe Masters, and he's got connections to the United Nations and the Clinton Foundation. Then there's John Edge. He's got connections to Lehman Brothers and J.P. Morgan. So there's your connections to the banks. Okay. Seth Berkley's got connections to the CDC, to Rockefeller Foundation, and to the AIDS vaccine that you just described, or he was tried to make an AIDS vaccine. Uh, then there's Oliver Bussman. Might be Busman. I might be pronouncing it wrong. He's got connections to IBM. Just talked about them in the bill. Okay, Deutsche Bank, and then he's a big in blockchain. Right, and blockchain is going to be the way that they manage all this stuff. By the way, to go back to the police state pillar, I saw in New Jersey they have drones that go around and enforce social distancing. These things fly around, and they tell you to separate if you're out in public, or to go home if you're at the park. And I saw another company, I think it's Dragonfly. It's got a drone that takes your temperature. And so, I mean, it's so once they got the drones out flying around, I mean, all they got to do is update them with whatever algorithms they want to run on you, check your heart rate, whatever your neural algorithms. Probably pull up your all your social media history just through the face scan, and didn't like the interview me and you were doing right now, Jan. So they're gonna whatever send an alert. And then another guy in here is Alex Simmons. Okay, and then he's Microsoft. Works with the Microsoft Cloud and its artificial intelligence programs. Okay, and who's the main person that's said it over and over again? They want, he's saying that we all need this vaccine that they're going to ram through, they're going to rush through. We just talked about all the dangers of vaccines that.
Fauci.
Oh yeah, why? Yeah, him, but also Bill Gates.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
I mean,
of course.
Bill Gates, right? So
Ram through the vaccine that'll cause that it'll be laden with birth inhibiting, pregnancy inhibiting whatever in it. I mean, he's talked about that obviously for years. And for those of you who don't know, Bill Gates, his dad ran
William Gates Sr.
ran here. Let's go, William H. Gates Sr. And he was part of Planned Parenthood, which of course is eugenics, and Planned Parenthood is part of eugenics, population control, and Sir Julian Huxley drink was behind that. But as if the 1.5 billion lives they've already taken wasn't enough, you got to promote that, and all of this social distancing stuff. Nobody's going to be having families and whatnot. I mean, you couldn't even go to the hospital probably to deliver right now. So
People think that that sounds kooky. Look, you can go to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, click on the, go in there, search in the website. It's just search William Gates, William H. Gates, and then search also Malthus or Malthusian, either one. And there's it's a press release, or they gave him some award, okay, for his work with the foundation, and in it he talked about the
here, hold on
Malthusian
a
theory of
second. Where is it
finding.
at? I'm pulling up Bill and Melinda Gates. And then it says right here, right when you go to the front page, all lives have value.
Right. And so alone together, like you can't, there is no such thing as individual conscience anymore, right? There is nothing higher than the latest model, the latest algorithm, and the interpretive authority of the CDC or Bill Gates or
This is interesting. Combat infectious diseases, and then they have an Indian woman there. But isn't India one of the countries with the worst foodborne illness and whatnot because they wipe their rear ends with their hand, and people are known to get deli belly, if you travel there for a week or more? I mean, that's kind of ironic. Irony in your face there. Okay, so what am I looking for here?
Well, I was just, I was throwing out that for the audience. If you keywords, if you go into search, just search the website and you search his name, and then you search the word Malthus or Malthusian. There's a it's a press release or something where they, it was one of these ceremonies.
How do you spell Malfis or what?
No, TH. Thomas Malthus, Malthus.
Malthus. Oh, Malthus, got it.
Yeah. And so, Thomas Malthus was he's an economist, and basically,
okay, so out of these talks, which one am I looking here that popped up here? There's 4 of them.
Oh, I mean, I was just going off memory. I don't know the title of the article. There's probably several in there where he talks about Malthus.
Asia celebrates grand opening of 2 high schools in Texas, Quebec's public libraries. Blah, blah, blah. In French here, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation awards $15.1 million to treat African sleeping sickness. Anyway.
Yeah, no, you'd have to dig for it, but it's in there. I mean, I've cited it in one of my articles, and I can't remember the name of it. I just know that he gives a little, and this is recently. This is like after 2000. He's talking about
India uses homeopathy and didn't get corona. Yeah, India everybody's already sick and they're vegetarians, and that's why that's why unless you know the people who own or run an Indian restaurant, you should never eat at Indian restaurants. They have the highest rate of food poisoning. Like, oh
man, I love Indian food. Man.
Oh, it tastes great, but yeah,
that's where your Ayurvedic medicine comes from. And I actually, in talking about medicine for a second, for years, I had lung problems. So by the way, I'm one of these people that probably, if I got it, probably might have some problems.
Hey, don't go to India because your Ayurvedic medicine, you just puke for a week and then.
Well, let me tell you, dude. I used to have every time the seasons changed, I used to get bronchitis like clockwork, man. And I had a really good friend in college. He was actually from Nepal, which it's not India, but it was all one big country.
Timmy says maybe they have a stronger immune system from living in shit and feces in the streets.
Well, this is where your turmeric therapies and things come from, though. Your Jimbu, your what do you call it? All that Ayurvedic stuff, ginger, garlic. He's the one who turned me on to that, and I just started taking that when I would get a sore throat. And dude, I haven't been to the doctor in 10 years. So, it's something to it for sure. The point that I was trying to make is that, I'd rather try that than the vaccine or whatever pharmaceutical they're going to fast track. You know what I mean? Like they take their time with it, and there's problems with it. I don't know why we're excited that it's going to get fast tracked, right? I mean, it's a little disconcerting.
We should get back on top here. The topic.
Yeah, so the ID 2020 thing, it's just and so 2 years later, we're getting close to the time of right before the vaccine, the virus kind of starts to break out, and there's it's called Event 201. It's one of many simulations that have been run by organizations like Johns Hopkins University, and this time it was in partnership with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. and with the World Economic Forum. It's basically, they were running a simulation that looked just like, what's happening now. All right. And so you got Gates. You got Gates's, fingerprints on both of those projects, and they're coming up right before this. And so, once again, we're talking about who benefits from this.
Isn't it true that Bill Gates doesn't allow his own kids to get vaccinated?
I've heard that. I've never looked it up. I couldn't verify that. But it would. I know that he and Jobs and those guys didn't let their kids use the tablets and stuff like that for learning. So why, do they apply stuff equally, to their kids across the board? I don't know. Probably not to us, but they probably apply that rule to their own kin. I imagine. And then the third part is, okay, with the World Health Organization, you got this guy Tedros, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. Most people usually refer to him as Tedros. This guy is, ties to Communist Party, and basically covered up a cholera epidemic. I think several actually. And so these are the people that are telling you that we need to lock down and that we need a vaccine and that you don't have any say in it. And it's Easter Sunday tomorrow, right, Jan? And what they're telling people that
don't go to church. Your church is invalid anymore.
It's a non-essential service. They're trying to tell us that God is a non-essential service, that the moral law, the place we go to get the moral law, the natural law, the truth, is non-essential. If they're saying that God is non-essential, they're saying that they're God. They're saying that their algorithms are God and they're the priests. And, for all the reasons that people, didn't like the authority of the church, we have the same thing going on right now where you can't question.
Oh no, it's
people.
way worse.
I'm
at least
saying,
the church was based on logos for the most part, and there's a whole lot of crap propaganda against the church too.
And at least there was a text that you could read, and you can go, "Hey, you said this, but the Bible says that."
Right.
Well, they didn't get to take the Bible and go, "We added an algorithm this week. We added some more data," and so you could call them out on their contradictions, and in that way, this is why we had the many schisms, and some of them for worse than for better, but it's because of the fact that the Bible is supposed to be give you the moral law or the truth or narratives that get you there, right? And it establishes the golden rule.
And it establishes a standard of living and a path to follow to avoid the crap that we're in right now. So.
and again, here's the thing. At the end of the day, look, for people that are listening that might not believe in God or whatever, look, why we can go to the grocery store, we can even go to the drive-thru, we can go to certain essential services. Why can't that be an essential service where people practice the same? They can practice social distancing. They can make we're reasonable people. Why? The flip side of it is this. Even if you don't believe in God, and especially if you don't, you certainly shouldn't want anybody, whether it be science, doctors, government, or corporations, claiming to have the final say and essentially be God. If you don't believe in God, you don't want anybody to be God. If you do believe in God, you don't want them to be God.
Do you believe in logos, or do you believe in truth? Do you believe truth exists? If you do believe in truth, or that truth even exists, then you should understand logos. And understand what the New Testament is, and it's like people are so caught up in what they hear about the church or what other people have told them, and they don't sit down and read the New Testament or the Bible for themselves, and they really don't get it. It's like, I get accused of, oh, well, you don't understand Islam. Yeah, because I've read too much of it, and it makes me want to vomit every time I read another passage of, you got to kill the kafir. You got to lie to the kafir. You got to, subjugate the kafir. You got to charge the kafir the jizya tax, blah, blah, blah.
I do want to, this is going to sound kind of new agey, kind of Jordan Peterson-y for a second, but allow me to circle back, okay? It's actually the opposite. It's actually the opposite when I get to the end of it. I'm going to start with C.S. Lewis to demonstrate how. So, you know that he does the hero's journey thing, and he basically synthesizes the great myths and religions and things of history, and he synthesizes, it's all, it's past the same thing. He does that thing. right? C.S. Lewis almost did the same thing, except at the end, he told you that Christ was what he called the true myth. And you can see in Christianity, it is in many ways a synthesis of the other dispensations, we might say. So, I mean, even when we talk about First John, the beginning was the Logos. Logos was a Greek term. It comes from Heraclitus, right? It wasn't really a Hebrew term. And then if you go back to stuff like, Abraham, when he's blessed by Melchizedek. Well, who is Melchizedek? He wasn't a Christian or a Jew. He was proto, going back to the time
The
of
early priesthood, yeah.
yeah, it was probably something maybe looked like a proto-Zoroastrianism or something, and stuff like that. I think always maybe takes a wrong turn. But when we talk about logos, you can compare that to stuff like the Tao or the Urta in Hinduism. The Tao was the Chinese version. The Dharma would be Buddhist. Even the Persians had the Asha, but it was this idea. And by the way, there's history that shows that Heraclitus and Pythagoras were influenced by the Persians. So and in the Bible, things like I think you had Steve Jones on, like there's elements of the Bacchaea in it, and so it does actually, even the Horus narrative, some New Agers will try to tell you it's the opposite. The Bible stole the Horus narrative, and but
right, it's the other way around. Well, I think
that's what I see.
I think Mircea Eliade and Sir James George Fraser were behind the whole inversion of using New Age and pagan beliefs as what created the Bible rather than the other way around. I think they flipped that whole narrative.
Well, but the reason I brought that up
we're way off topic here, though, dude.
Well, I do want to finish with this, which is that I at least whether it be Islam or Hinduism, at least they try to go towards whether it be the Urta or the Tao or whatever, they try to have some first cause, some metaphysics, right? Some belief in a God, and some attempt at truth that's not induction as the final say. And we talked about the occult stuff. I mean, induction. I mean, what we're seeing this science is essentially, whatever this, the Luciferian thread is that takes, natural law in its different directions. And, you're right. We went way off track. I think I got punched in the head.
You're cutting out. You cut out right then, right when you went to say that. You cut out. You cut out again. John, you keep cutting out. What did you say? Repeat the last couple sentences.
I says my internet am I here now?
Not really. No.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Not really.
I'm
Maybe
here.
your wife is using the computer in the other room or something.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's not that. No, it's not that. Well, the other I wanted to, the last thing I wanted to get with that was that, there also, when you believe in something like the Tao, the Urta, the Logos, natural law, golden rule, truth as an objective thing outside of, whatever is the sophisticated algorithm. When you believe in something like that, one of the realities or one of the truths that you accept is that we all die, man. It's, I've had my mom die when I was 19. Then my stepmom died 10 years later. If you look in my book, man, the first page, it's a long list of dead people that were very close to me, man. And, some of them died tragically, suddenly. Some of them died, expected and things like that, but, it's sad and it's never, but we all, that's part of it, man. And, we shouldn't give up our way of life to save our life. Thomas Paine said, give me liberty or give me death. And right now everybody's saying stuff like, take away everyone else's liberty to save my own life, and, New Testament, those who seek to save their lives will lose it. Those who lose their lives will save it. In other words, if you're going to try to save your health and your body, basically, at the expense of the truth, then that's living in a prison. Okay. And, but when you live in truth, and that is your highest principle, then you shouldn't really, no one wants to die. You know what I mean? Like, I've sparred and stuff. I don't like getting punched in the face, but something you got to accept. It's part of living, right? Dying or facing death is part of living. And there's a C.S. Lewis quote. I think it comes from The Abolition of Man, but I think it might be a different piece. It might be Mere Christianity. might even be a separate essay, but he's talking about. I wish I had it in front of me. I can paraphrase it pretty good. He says something like, how to live in an atomic age. You could basically plug in coronavirus with the atomic age. He says, this is a time when people had the bunkers, everybody's scared to die and all that. And he's like, how should we live during this time? He says, well, you should live the same way that you lived, during the Middle Ages when they had the Black Plague, or, during, the 3rd century or the 4th century when, Vikings were at your door, coming in, or, as we live now with air raids and cancer and automobile accidents and all these things. And he says, dying was never, escaping death was never a possibility. Dying has always been a certainty. He says, so, if the bomb is going to hit us, so he say if the coronavirus is going to get us, what he says is, let it find us doing human things. And he says, going to the store, reading a book with your family, going to the garden, spending time with your loved ones, praying, doing things like that. It shouldn't be in a mass hysteria, everybody trying to, cling on to their flesh, at all expenses, at all costs, including, our way of life, which, I don't know how great it'll be to live, without the freedoms that we have in the Bill of Rights, which is based on natural law and truth, so. May not always been applied that way, but that's what it's there for. Just,
right.
It's there for you to call it out.
But everything was based on slavery. No, it wasn't. But anyway, all right. That's a good place to wrap it up, John. Thank you so much, and thank you, the audience, for your participation, and thanks for all the super chats and whatnot. Hey, everybody in the chat. Hello, Zero Infinity and Amy, and I Belong in the Kitchen. All you all in there. Thanks so much for participating, Steve Moss, everybody. Really appreciate the support and the participation today. Please hit the like and subscribe, and we will, I don't know, I haven't been doing really a scheduled show because I've been locked at home and not really feeling the whole Tuesdays at 5 thing, but, I might do a show Tuesday at 5, I might not. So I might do one tomorrow or Tuesday. I'm going to have Dr. Tanya Yoni back on to discuss more on the COVID from the clinic perspective. And, so we can look at her angle from being on the front lines of it and whatnot. So it's good to take in all of these perspectives and decide from all of the facts. I'm glad to have medical professionals to talk to about this as well that are dealing with it on a first-person basis, and she just had her first patient die this week. So, it's, there's a lot to this, and the issue is, no, we shouldn't have given up our rights to save, 16, 20,000, even 30,000, even 80,000 people, because we go through.
How many people have died to save our rights, too, by the way? Like people that went to wars. I mean, like
well,
those people.
Now that's wow, yeah, and you couldn't even count that. That's in the tens of millions of people have died for our rights.
They risked their lives so that we could cling to our bodies and be scared, but so that we could be free, man.
So that we don't have to be mask shamed.
Yeah, man. So don't mask shame. Be nice to people. Whatever
right.
Whatever
yeah.
you think is the right way to handle this. I mean, allow people. You can take the extra precautions if you need them, and other people, what I mean. As long as they're, I think that's fair, man.
I agree. All right, everybody. See you soon. Take care.
Sorry about the problems with the audio, dude.
Yeah, well, say sorry to the audience, not to me.
Well, yeah, I thought you clicked out already.
Okay.
Everybody, yeah, sorry, everybody, for sure.
All right, there we go. Clicking out. Bye.